Hello everyone, I'm so delighted to see all of you here this morning. I know why you're here. It's all about the glaciers, right? I'm very happy to be here today. I am Dr. Peggy Smith. I teach in Southern California at California State University in Fullerton. And so I'm really happy to spend this week with you up here in Alaska. Let's start with a quote. None better than John Muir. He was a naturalist and a writer, and he did so much to help the creation of our national parks in the United States. And he did this in a really interesting way, of course. He invited the president at the time, Teddy Roosevelt, out for a camping trip. You know, just a guy's weekend, hanging out, showing in the beautiful areas that soon became Yosemite National Park. Well, he also helped create Glacier Bay National Park as well. So let's talk about glaciers. What are glaciers? Glaciers are layers and layers and layers of snow and ice. It's compacted, it's heavy, it's dense, and it's beautiful. And we, as geographers, we talk basically about two different types of glaciers. Arctic glaciers, meaning up high in latitude, and alpine glaciers, meaning a high in elevation. In Southern California, we have glaciers, but you have to go pretty high in elevation to see those glaciers. Up here, they have both. Let's take a look at them. Glaciers come down, they're always moving, okay? And they're moving down the side of mountains. And as they come down, they are like huge bulldozers, pushing everything out in front or off to the sides, everything. Soils, rocks, boulders, tree trunks, whatever's there, this glacier is going to push it down. And it's going to deposit it right out in the very front, right at the end of the glacier. Once that glacier starts melting back, it is left this new landform, this pile of rocks and debris and boulders and soils and all of that just left. It's called a moraine. If it leaves it at the end of the glacier, then it's called a terminal moraine. If it pushes the stuff out to the side, those are called lateral moraines. And I'll even show you some medial moraines that are in the middle of the glacier. What you see coming forward is meltwater. And the meltwater off glaciers is very interesting. You might think the meltwater is going to be up here on the top of the glacier. And there will be some that's there, but most of it is underneath the glacier, between the ice and the land beneath it. That's where the water flows. And it is going to flow either as sheet flow or stream flow. Either one, it's going to be racing down the side of the mountain. And when it comes down, sometimes it brings down with it rocks and boulders and big, huge chunks of ice. So you don't want to get too close to a glacier. Also, the meltwater turns this interesting color, kind of greenish. And what it is it's called glacial flour. It's the white, it looks like flour on the water. And it turns that water kind of a turquoisey green color. I know that once you see the color of that water, you're going to understand what I'm talking about. And whenever you see that, you know you're getting close to glaciers. This is just a very simple drawing or graphic for you to look at. And what it is showing is the mountainside. We get snow all up in the mountains and down the sides as well. But it seems to gather up on the tops of mountains. And it carves out these really interesting, unique shapes. The rounded one over here on the right-hand side is called a cirque glacier. And oftentimes they make these bowl shapes that carve right into the sides of mountains. Sometimes they flow downward and they catch up with this valley glacier. And these valley glaciers are almost like tributaries to even bigger glaciers. Some of the carved out landscapes that you see in the backside, like arêtes, those are real sharp, jaggedy peaks on the mountaintops. Horns are when the mountaintop has been carved away by three sides. Okay, and that leaves a horn. If it's carved away on all four sides, that's called a Matterhorn. When glaciers come down the side of mountains, they are carving out U-shaped valleys. Okay? If it's just a river coming through, that cuts a V-shaped valley. But because glaciers are so big and so dense and heavy, and the gravity that pulls them down, they carve out these beautiful U-shaped valleys. And once they melt back, they leave these beautiful landscapes. Here's another one. Can you see the U shape right here? It's just spectacular. If this glacier had come all the way down and touched the water as it was carving out this U-shaped glacier or valley, it would be called a tidewater glacier. Let's go look at some of the mountaintop glaciers. Up here at the top, we've got the cirques. That's what they look like. Just that round shape way up at the top. You can see the sharp, jaggedy peaks. Those are the arêtes we talked about. You can also see hanging glaciers. Those will probably turn into waterfalls at some point. And then they feed into the valley glaciers, which remember act as that tributary that feeds into the main glacier. Again, just peeking more at those sharp arêtes. Sometimes glaciers will leave behind big rocks and boulders. These are called erratics, and they're just like, where did this thing come from? Well, I'll tell you, this is again is a simple graphic, but you get the idea. The inputs here are snow and ice that come every year. They accumulate, and with the weight and the mass of these glaciers and gravity's pull, they slide down the hill. And if there is debris out in front of it, that becomes a moraine. If there's no debris in front of it and it breaks off in the water, then that becomes a tidewater glacier. So what's the type of ice and snow in these glaciers? It just like the ice that's in your freezer? It's not at all, okay? Maybe some of it is. Let me take that back. If you were walking on the top of a glacier, it is crispy and crunchy and feels like it's dry. And that would be somewhat similar to the ice in your freezer, the frost that develops on packages in your freezer and so on. But because of the dense weight down deep inside glaciers, the makeup of that ice changes. It almost becomes plasticky. And so when a glacier moves, and especially when it moves around a corner like this, it's bending, and some parts move faster than other parts. That's why we get the cracking up on the top, because it's dry, it's brittle, and it's cracked. And that's what gives us crevices, and that's where you see bits of blue shining through. Also, you see this almost looks like asphalt. That's because of just sediments that layer on the glaciers. This is what I was telling you about. A glacier has come down the side of this hill, created moraines. Terminal moraine, remember, is out in the front, lateral moraines off to the side, and now we've even got some medial moraines. When you are up here this week, I hope you will just be willing to blow a lot of money on this, because it is pricey, but it is one thing that you will always remember the rest of your life. They do trips where you can fly in a helicopter, and we took the pilot's choice helicopter ride. That means the pilot will choose where you're going to go. So he's looking for better weather, he's looking for better places to land, he's looking for places where you can actually get out and walk around on this glacier. It is, again, something you're never going to forget. Once you're up there walking around, you can feel the crunchiness of that brittle ice. You can hear it crunching. And as you're walking, one thing I would tell you is be very careful, because sometimes a layer of ice can form over something like a crevice, and we don't want any problems with that, okay? Lakes that form up on top, beautiful, brilliant, they look so brilliantly blue. Looking at a tidewater glacier, and hopefully you can see sediments. Those lines of dark, those are sediments that fall each year. So you can see layer and layer, or year and year and year of snow and ice compacted down. It's heavy, like we said. What's going on here is this one is melting, and a little bit of melt on the top, but most is melting underneath, pushing things out. So if you look at these blocks right here, those are blocks of ice stuck under rocks. They've popped up from underneath the glacier. That's why I'm saying you can't get too close to glaciers. You don't know what's happening underneath. and it could be very problematic. This is a Mulan, and when you get streams of water, they move fast, like a raging river underneath the snow, and then they sometimes drop hundreds of feet down the side of the mountain. So you want to be very careful you don't get too close to it, because you're just standing on ice. It could break. And the water races down, and it's icy cold. So if somebody fell into that, there's no way you could have rescuers get there fast enough. Calving. This is what we all want to see. I think tomorrow or the day after we pull into Glacier Bay, and if you're lucky, you will see some calving, and you will hear it probably before you see it. It sounds like thunder, and when you turn to look, you'll see these huge chunks of ice fall into the water, almost like slow motion, the waves billowing up. It's incredible. But again, that's why you don't want to get too close, even in a canoe or a boat or anything like that. You've got to be very careful. We should be at Glacier Bay, and typically the ships come in and they spin you around very slowly. So number one, you got to get out there early and get a good place to watch from. Number two, don't worry about moving all around, because the boat will be moving around. So there's no bad place to see from, okay? Number three, it's going to be cold. So make sure you stop and get a coffee or a hot chocolate or something, because you want to be out there all day. We had the opportunity to land on the side of a mountain in an airplane. Now, there's no runway. You have to land in a way that comes in uphill, because that's instantly going to slow you down quickly. Once you're down, of course, you get out and have a snowball fight. And as you're going to take off, you're going to take off over that lowest part of the mountain. That way you don't have to climb too fast, because instead of climbing, the earth is going down, so you're doing fine. You're going to land on sleds. It's an incredible feeling. It's very smooth and very quick. One last look at some glaciers before we end our discussion today. We might get a chance to see some of these while we're out there. Remember, if we see chunks of ice like this iceberg, remember about 90% is underwater. So again, you've got to be very careful in the water. If you get the chance to go up to see Denali National Park, I hope you'll make a plan to do that. We won't be seeing it this week, but I hope you add that to your plans. Thanks for coming today. I'll see you later.